video, we're going to talk to you about how to be empowered in difficult conversations. This is part of the UCL Skills series on disagreeing well. Sometimes we can feel that conversations are difficult, and we may feel anxious about that. We can use that anxiety as a reminder to take a step back and pause and soften. And then maybe even to remember the 5 rules of empowerment in difficult conversations that I'm going to talk you through today. But first, let's just take a moment and think back to a time when you did feel anxious about having a challenging conversation where you disagreed with someone. And you may want to pause the video for a minute and just go back in your mind to that experience and what was going on and how that felt physically, how that felt emotionally to you. Part of that anxiety is the idea that we might not agree. And there's sometimes an anxious feeling in conversations. Even I sometimes feel a bit like a rabbit caught in the headlights when I'm having a really difficult conversation and I feel sort of pressured to come up with an answer, pressured to be right, to convince the other person, to get my point across really clearly, and to answer difficult questions on the spot. The reality is that there isn't just this one conversation, and you don't have to perform to convince in a conversation. It's perfectly okay to not know some points, to have to go away and reflect about some things, and to not always have every answer right away. There's a lot to feeling empowered in conversations, but here I'm going to talk about 5 points. And if you're clear on these 5 points, then you're more likely to feel empowered in a difficult conversation. You'll notice that the 5 points are all deeply interrelated. So the first point is control. You need to know what you control and know what you don't control. Often, we want to control the other person, and that is the thing that we control the least. So once you can accept that you don't have control over the other person, you're in a far better place to be able to have a difficult conversation. You have some control over the relationship and some control over yourself. We think we have full control. We don't always. We have a lot of emotions sometimes. But knowing that you don't control the other person is the first step. The second point is differentiation. Not the mathematical kind of differentiation, but knowing that it's okay for me and you to have different opinions, different views of the world, different perspectives. We can often feel threatened when people have different opinions to us. It can be over stupid things. I remember that I used to feel a little bit upset when my husband didn't like the same food as me. He's the only person I know who doesn't like dal or hummus. So those are silly things. And obviously, we can get upset over more serious things like deeper political and social issues. We have to know that it's okay to have different opinions to other people, and for other people to hold opinions that we disagree with. And there's always a reason for that, but we'll come to that later. So the third point, the third rule is self-esteem. And self-esteem includes not having to have all the answers. Many people think that they have self-esteem, particularly people who appear confident, but confidence and self-esteem are not the same. I would dare to say that most of us actually struggle with self-esteem. Our levels of self-esteem can change moment to moment. If you feel one down, insecure a lot. You may sometimes have low self-esteem. What people often don't realize is that if you feel one up, superior, better than, that's also a sign of low self-esteem. True self-esteem feels like same as. I'm a human being and you're a human being and we both have value. This doesn't mean that you may not be better at something than I am, or I may not be better at something than you. You may be better at art than me. I may be better at clear thinking than you, or vice versa. But we each have value, and our opinions have value. You have value. You are important. You matter. In the moments when you truly know that about yourself and others, you have good self-esteem. The good news is self-esteem is like a muscle and it can be trained. You're not stuck with the self-esteem you had in the past. It's really important to work this muscle. It will change your life. So the next point, the fourth point, is mutual respect and curiosity. If we know that I matter and you matter and my views matter and your views matter, we're entering the zone of mutual respect. Often in arguments or difficult conversations, we lose sight of the person we disagree with as a real and actual person. We start to treat them or feel towards them like they're an object in the way of what we want. In the words of Martin Buber, we move from an I-thou relationship, where the person is sacred, to an I-it relationship. We need to understand that every person is sacred and deserves respect. A person's views are almost always shaped by their culture, their background, and their life experience. If a person has views that you don't like, chances are there's a reason for that. They may come from a different culture or background or have a different life experience. So we want to really get curious and start to understand why that person thinks the way they do, not just what they think. What they think is the surface level, and to be honest, almost a bit boring. Why they think what they think takes you into a rich tapestry of human connection and understanding. When you start to understand and discuss what a person thinks and why they think a certain way, a real conversation has begun. Sometimes it can be hard to get curious about views when you really don't agree with them and you find them offensive. But that's where the concept of understanding and agreeing comes in. So that's our fifth rule. Understanding is different to agreeing. When you struggle to get curious about a person's views, you have to understand that understanding and agreeing are completely different things. You might say that the moon is pink with purple spots, and I don't agree with you, but I can understand that that's your perspective, and then I can start to look at why. Simple as that, as one of my friends used to say. I hope this has been helpful. If you truly want to get to grips with these 5 concepts, you will feel much more empowered in difficult conversations. Once you know about how to be empowered in difficult conversations, you're really ready to fully embrace conversation consent, which is the topic of our next video. If you want to hear more about each of these 5 rules on being empowered in difficult conversations, head over to my YouTube channel and there will be a separate video there unpacking each of these topics. If you'd like to make sure you stay up to date with future videos on the UCL Disagreeing Well Skills series, subscribe to UCL's YouTube channel and also subscribe to UCL Mind's newsletter.